Good morning, everybody. Thank you, Charlie, for your together action talk. Nothing else. We're all in this soup together. Right? Thank you. Very clear. So that's what Buddhism is all about, love and compassion for all beings. And you're one of those people, right? So we're all muddling around here together, and hopefully our direction is to help each other. So thank you for that clear talk. So are there any questions this morning? Any kind of question is okay. Practicing sutra, Zen style.
I have a question.
Yeah.
Was there always a message for like the not for me message and helping people direction? Or was there points where it was maybe a bit more egotistical and like competitive?
Yeah, well, Zen has a particular style, and if you're not familiar with it, or you're looking at it from the outside, you might think that it's kind of competitive or egoistic in a way, right? But that would be true of any kind of teaching. So it's important to always look at the behind meaning of the teaching. So Zen is a particular kind of style. It's always pointing at that, right? So Charlie talked about the Buddha, but in Zen we say, if you meet the Buddha on the road, kill him, right? So that doesn't mean kill the Buddha. What it's pointing to is for you to actually realize what the teaching is talking about. And it might use kind of techniques that are kind of contentious or seem like they grate on you a little bit or something, right? So you may not like kongens, or you might not like being hit by the kaiosaku, the wake-up stick, the dongjong chukpi, we call it in Korean, because you don't like that, right? So it may seem kind of harsh or contentious or challenging or something, but all of those are kind of techniques, and they're always just techniques to help to wake you up, maybe kind of shock you into something, you know. Because the biggest problem to me always is like laziness, right? So even the Buddha said, you don't want to be born into heaven because the people in heaven are lazy, and then they just lounge around up there in heaven, and then boom, suddenly they drop out of heaven, and when they hit the ground, they're always shocked. You know, what happened? So no matter what it is, it's always coming and going. Even your wonderful place in heaven, where you sit there peacefully with Charlie playing cards, you're going to fall out of that heaven sometimes. So that's transience. Everything's always changing. So the techniques are to kind of like wake you up. So Buddha was awakened by when he saw old age, sickness, and death. So all of us see those things. We just usually ignore them. I remember when I was a young kid, I never wanted to go to the hospital to visit old people because, first of all, when you go to the hospital, you're going to see old people. And then when you get there, you're going to be reminded of sickness and death, right? So I never liked that. You know, I'd rather go to a bar and play pool or something and drink beer. So what that does is kind of wake you up from your I'm in a bar playing pool and having fun kind of mind, actually moment to moment in your life. So you don't get attached to that and you realize that, well, there's something else going on here in life, and that's suffering. And that's our job actually to alleviate that suffering. Right? So that's why every school will have some kind of shocking kind of technique, and that's it has. But it always you want to look at the behind meaning. It isn't just to shock you; it's to actually wake you up so you find out what you truly are. So the shock is a kind of technique. So like in Charlie's little bit he shared of his life, actually all those bad things were good, because those bad things pushed him and forced him to seek some kind of solution, right? Just didn't lounge around and all the whatever bad was going on. It actually shoved him, just the way old age, sickness, and death shoved the Buddha out of his good situation, right? So without some kind of shoving like that, the Buddha would probably be laying around the palace with some concubines eating some good food. Well, not anymore because he would have died. So the Buddha didn't have it so good either, right? Sit around underneath a tree for a few years and see how you feel without any food. You won't feel very good. So those are all just kind of, everything is kind of like a needle poking, pushing you towards this great bodhisattva path. It's not for me, but you are one of the people that you're trying to save. So why not get about it? Okay. Don't attach to the teaching style. You'll gravitate towards certain parts of it, like uh, I spent a lot of time around Mahagosananda reading that Charlie had. But Mahagosananda was not a, oh, everything's so wonderful floating up in heaven kind of Buddhist guy, even though that reading kind of sounded like it. He was just the opposite because he was the head of um, Cambodian Buddhism. Cambodian Buddhism wasn't doing too well back in those days. Remember Pol Pot and those kind of people? So he fled to the United States. In fact, he was going to set himself on fire in front of the United Nations, and Zen Master Sung Sung talked him out of it and said, no, come back. You got to help people. Setting yourself on fire, well, that's already been done. Try something else, like try helping people. So Mahagosananda was great. He's probably one of the few Theravadan patriarchs that taught Mahayana Buddhism. I mean, explicitly. So, well, there was a lot of Theravadan monks that didn't like him because his style is a little different. But he used a style that would, wake people up. So, if you were forced to sit down and listen to the Heart Sutra and you're a Theravadan monk, it kind of shocks you, which is what's supposed to happen. Becoming a monk isn't supposed to be like getting on the gravy train and floating off into heaven. It's about helping people, right? So whatever it is, different situations are always different. So whatever that technique is, hopefully it's grating on you. If you're having a bad time, actually that means it's working. If you don't like your teacher, that probably means it's working. So it's about sticking with it, not whether I have a great, fantastic teacher. It's so wonderful. Well, then that probably means you should be moving on to something that isn't so pleasant. Because that's usually what wakes human beings up. Okay? Do it. So are there any other questions?
I have a question.
Yeah.
Uh,
Who's talking? Wave. Oh, I see. Okay. Hi, Chris.
Sangha is one of our three treasures. Uh, but why do Zen masters in so many stories go off to a cave in the middle of a mountain in nowhere?
Right. Right. So that also is just a technique, right? And we go off in a cave in the middle of a mountain somewhere. In fact, you may have done it yesterday with Bonhe Zen Master, So that cave in a mountain somewhere just points to it's a kind of technique. But actually it's about your mind. It's not about being in a cave, right? So if you're a Zen Master Sung Sung used to say there's many different kinds of students, right? So they're kind of like horses. So to get this horse to go, what are you going to do? Well, you might take a whip and just beat the crap out of it, and then the horse will start running, because it doesn't like that. Or maybe you yell at it and then it bolts off and runs, And really high class horses, you just pass the whip over their rear end, and as the shadow passes over their rear end, they run boom, like crazy. In other ones, you just have to hold up the whip and show it to them, and then they run. So given whatever the circumstance is, you may need to do different kinds of things. Zen Master Sung Sung always said, well, the highest class practitioner can sit right there on Fifth Avenue in front of the Trump Tower and practice there. No problem. Right? So that's different than a cave in Tibet. So it all depends on the circumstances. So what you're reading about there is somebody who used that particular kind of technique, right? So best is just to keep a just now mind, keep a practicing mind all the time, 24 hours a day in your life. That's the best technique. But even that isn't a technique. All it is pointing to you waking up just now. And you can wake up just now anytime. You don't have to be in a cave in Tibet. Okay? So most important is to do it. Moment, 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 moment. There's nothing special going on here. Although we talk about special just to poke you in, to wave the whip in front of you so that you'll start doing something, right? Because if you're anything like me, you're very, very lazy and you need that whip to kind of wake you up a little bit. So actually, Charlie is quite fortunate. You know, he had an unfortunate life. So unfortunate is actually fortunate. You know, the Buddha created his own misfortune by leaving home, right? So you think, oh, wow, it's really fortunate to be born a king. Well, maybe it isn't, right? Although you wouldn't want to maybe wish the alternative on anybody. Any of those kind of circumstances are pointing towards, hey, what's really going on here? You know, which is what we call the great question of life and death. So that takes all kinds of different forms, you know. And all those different forms are pointing towards one thing, you finding what you really are, not what you think you are, not when somebody told you you think you are, not what the Buddha said you think you are, but actually, since nobody can explain it to you, it's actually based on your own experience. So the horse is really lucky to get beaten by the whip because he gets to see a different part of the ranch. And somewhere out there is the actual answer about what it means to be a horse. But it isn't far away, it's very close by. In fact, it's right inside your own so-called mind. But if I said mind, I'd also have to say, well, there's no mind. Right? Any other questions? Hope that answers your question. Any other questions?
I have a question.
Yeah, Jane.
What about fear? Like you can be clear and you can see a situation and know what needs to be done in that situation, but how do you overcome fear?
Yeah. So the Buddha said that the reason human beings suffer is because of desire and anger. And we might boil that down to like and dislike. So fear is dislike about what you think is going to happen in the future, right? So that might, if you're afraid of snakes, you might not want to move to Australia because there are many, many snakes. And when you walk around, one of them might bite you and then you'll die. All right. So inside of like and dislike, there's a kind of wisdom, but usually it's attached to opposites, so you want to get what you want. So in the future, that would be like hope. Like, I hope we can all get together next week, but who knows? One of us might not be here, including me. So on the other hand, I fear that somebody is going to die before next week and they won't be able to practice with us, right? So all of those are a kind of thinking. It's natural for human beings to do that. None of the thinking you do is unnatural. Even the most unnatural thinking you have is actually natural. So the question is not about getting rid of fear. And it's not about falling into fear. It's about not attaching to it. So inside that fear, if you look at it clearly, there might be a message. If you're walking out in the outback in Australia, you might want to watch out for snakes. Or when I was backpacking in Wyoming, I always looked out for snakes because there are several kinds of poisonous ones there, right? In Nebraska, we have copperheads and rattlesnakes. So if you're walking out there, you want to be careful, okay? So but that kind of fear can just paralyze you, like you say. So it's about practicing letting go of it, but you have to let go of your anger and your desire. Then you can see clearly, you know. So that fear could be like a cloud which prevents you from seeing what actually needs to be done in a situation to actually help somebody, including yourself, right? So you want to let go of that fear. In this case, it's an anger. It's a I don't like. You know, you're thinking about what's going to happen in the future, or you don't like, or you like what's going on right now, or you like, or you didn't like what was going on in the past, right? So you might suffer from guilt. So that's a kind of dislike about the past. Or that fear might be right into almost this moment. So you just want to perceive what's happening moment to moment to moment. Maybe your mind's making like, maybe your mind's making dislike. I don't know. It's always doing it all the time. It's natural. Don't fight it. Let go of it. So meditation is kind of like the kid at the mall with the balloon. So if the kid lets go of the balloon, it goes to the ceiling of the mall, right? Now, usually you think that's bad, but if it's your mind, it's actually good because it allows you not to be controlled by the balloon or holding on to the balloon or what your mommy's going to say to you when you do accidentally let go of that balloon, right? So you got to see through the situation, see what's going on. But this like and dislike mind keeps you from doing that. So try that. I know what the alternative is, and it just doesn't work out, like Charlie said. So I want to thank you all for coming today and listening and practicing together and chanting and wishing well to other people through our Jijang Bosal chanting or Kwansen Bosal chanting. So that's this together thing. Everything is about together action. Everything's together action all the time. You know, where would you be without the bacteria living in your gut? So we're always doing together action with everything all the time. We just think we aren't. So if you let go of that thinking, then you see that, and then you can actually help people in that together action situation in this moment. That's our life. We just think it's something else. So let go. Don't worry, be happy, as my famous guru, Sat Guru used to say. But that happy is big happy. It's not small ha 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 happy. Okay, so thank you for coming and practicing together.